Last episode, we did kind of like the top 10 questions. So today I want to talk about the biggest divorce mistakes that we see people make. And so I have my handful of ones, and I actually haven't really prepped Thomas for this one. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
That's fine.
See if you can come up with one or two that you think are.
I'm good at thinking on my feet. That's why I became an attorney.
There you go. But I wanted to start with this one because we talked about it sort of at the end of the last episode, which is needlessly starting your case off with a DV. And, again, I think you have to balance this. Thomas and I talked about this, and of course, we don't ever want to be.
Well, you got to start it off with a domestic violence case.
That's how you make all your money.
That's how I make all my money.
Well, and we don't ever want to discourage anyone that needs a DV from, for those of you who don't know what a DV is, a domestic violence restraining order. We don't ever want to discourage somebody from getting one of those. We have several clients where they have been very badly physically abused, verbally, emotionally, mentally, financially, abused. And I think sometimes you do have to have a restraining order. Sometimes the only way you can back down the other person is to have that restraining order. And so I think there are times that you need it, but I think we see a exponentially large number of cases that start out this way, and they totally polarize the people right from the beginning. So any hope of settlement or controlling costs or any of that aspect of it is almost completely out the window when you start your case that way.
Right.
I think that the moral of the story is don't do it unless it's really needed, and unless you really have the financial resources to support it. It can get very expensive very quickly, so just be aware of that. The next thing that I think is a big mistake, and this sort of dovetails with the other one, is hiring a super aggressive attorney.
Right. And I think that many law firms market to clients with the promise that they will be a zealous advocate, and a lot of times an overzealous advocate, and be like, my way, right or wrong.
Right.
And that's not going to get you in most cases where you want to go, unless where you want to go is bankruptcy court.
Right.
So if you have children, especially, I think it's really important to start off on somewhat of a cooperative footing. I like to advise people to look at attorneys that also do mediation.
Right.
Or attorneys that hold themselves out as being friendly to resolution. And that doesn't mean that you lay down. That doesn't mean that you don't defend your position. But it does mean that you reach out and you say, well, why don't we agree to this instead of going to court?
Well, and the thing that does is it's sort of like you wouldn't go to somebody that's just a mediator only and expect them to be this bulldog out the gate that just aggressively litigates your case and no other path. By the same thing of going to an aggressive attorney that only litigates and knows no other path, you don't have any of the offset of potential resolution. So I think either of those extremes can be a downside. And so I think what you want to do is look for somebody that, like Thomas said, has a problem-solving approach, wants to resolve your case, as much of your case as they can, because that's going to be good for your family. It's going to be good for your finances. But you also need somebody that has enough experience to know when that's not going to work, or when the other side's being unreasonable or whatever, and knows that, look, we got no choice here. We've got to litigate. Right. And knows how to do that effectively.
Right. Walk softly, but carry a big stick, in the words of Teddy Roosevelt, I believe, said that.
Right. The next thing that we see a lot of, and this usually is more an issue that comes up right in the thick of the case, and particularly in litigation cases, right when you're up to your eyeballs and all this stuff going on, and things seem to start going south because somebody isn't cooperating.
Right. So,
and that involves not just not cooperating with your ex, but also not cooperating with the court process.
Okay.
We see both of those things that cause problems.
Okay. So how would you summarize that? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, it's not really a question. I just think a big mistake people make is they don't cooperate. So what the court really wants from you in these situations is for you to quote unquote be the adult.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do because we're emotional and we're upset and all of those things. But when you're not cooperating with your ex, or you're making things harder than they need to be, or you're not following court orders that the court makes at the hearing, and you don't do what you're supposed to do, all that lack of cooperation can get you what Thomas calls wearing the black hat.
That's true. The court wants you to obey kind of the spirit of the orders. Like if you have supervised visits, you can either rail against it, or you can make those the best doggone supervised visits known to mankind.
Yeah.
And that's a better strategy because it makes the court think that you care about the children and not about the other party.
Right. Or being rigid with the other parent, like, oh no, the pickup time is 10 o'clock and I'm not changing it from that. And I don't care if you have work, and I don't care if it's going to make you late. And I don't care if whatever, the pickup time is at 10 o'clock, come hell or high water. And it's kind of like, well, the court wants you to be reasonable with the other parent, and
that's true,
and be flexible and try to accommodate schedules and do the normal things like you would do, like any two parents that were living in a household would have to do. Oh, well, I have to go to work at this time. Okay, well, I can get off a little bit early and we can they expect you to sort of make a certain amount of those accommodations even as co-parents. So if you're really resistant and you're being very, very rigid about the orders, sometimes that can backfire and cause the court to see you as the problem.
True.
The other thing that I see that I think is ridiculous, and I don't know why people even have this thought, but sometimes we'll try to talk, like one spouse will call us and want to do mediation. And so we try to contact the other spouse, and the other spouse will say something like, oh no, I'd rather just let the court decide.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't understand that logic at all, because first of all, when you are standing in front of another person, whoever that is, whether it's a judge, whether it's your parent, whether it's your sibling, whether it's an attorney, whether it's your best friend, whatever, there are going to be aspects of life that you agree on and aspects of life that you don't agree on. Value systems, religious beliefs, political beliefs, whatever it is, we all have differences of opinion with other people, even with our spouse. And so now you're telling me that you think the best way to handle the breakup of your family, the most intimate relations in your life, is to go stand in front of this stranger who knows nothing about your family or the dynamic. And you think the best path to a fair, for lack of a better word, or a workable solution is to let this person decide.
Right. Well, the court only has a small window to look at your situation through. They don't have all the facts, and they don't have all of the knowledge of you and your family dynamic. So they're looking at it through this little lens. And really the lens they're looking through it is who's being uncooperative, who's not being child focused. And those are complex questions, but essentially anytime you go in front of a decision maker on a 20-minute hearing, it's a crapshoot.
Right.
There's a certain amount of it that's a crapshoot, and you could get what you want, or you could definitely not get what you want. Right.
So it's always best if you're the one in control. And so I think that's kind of the theme of all of these different mistakes is, if you hire an aggressive attorney, that attorney, so to speak, is in control, not you. If you file a DV, that DV process is in control, not you. If you're not cooperating with the court, and all those things, then, you're putting the court in control of deciding whether to punish you, what to do, all that kind of thing, instead of you being in control of your situation.
Or you're putting your own emotions ahead and making irrational decisions.
Right. So just kind of all the different aspects of what we've talked about, those all involve things of, you not being in control. And as we all know, I am a huge fan of being in control.
Yes,
so
you are.
That's where you want to keep yourself in this process, because this is your family.
And I'm a people pleaser.
This is your family. To me, this is the most important thing to be in control of.
Right.
Above and beyond everything else.
Yeah.
So, all right. So thanks for joining us to talk about the biggest divorce mistakes. If you are listening to us on YouTube, or watching us, I should say, you're not just listening, you're watching, you can see us. Hi. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like at the bottom of this video and to subscribe so you get notice as more content comes out. If you are listening to the podcast, if you're not listening to the podcast, go listen to it, because on YouTube you're only getting a small amount. On the podcast you're getting the full resource. So go over to the podcast. If you're listening to us there, don't forget to rate and review us. Helps other people find us, helps us get higher up in the rankings so we can share the information to a wider audience. And as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the